Welcome to the Bottleneck Buster Guide to Defects. Now in this video I'm going to show you exactly how you find defects, how you can fix defects, and how you can make sure they stay fixed. So stick around, this is going to be a lot of good content. It's also going to give you many different examples irrespective of the industry you're in that are going to help you understand how to go about this process. Now, in my last video, we did talk about the 8 wastes, so go check that out if you haven't actually watched it yet. It turns into this acronym, downtime, and basically it's lots of different things that can happen within a process to cause you issues and cause those bottlenecks. So in this one, we're going to talk about defects. So there is some hidden cost of defects. There's a number of things that can be caused if you have a defect in your process. Now, they may be minor, could be a typo, could be a wrong part, could be a missed checkbox on an order, but they can cause various things. One of them could be wasted capacity, where team members are actually going back and doing rework instead of doing new and fresh work. Another one could be delayed handoffs. People are expecting something to go further downstream into your process and it's not actually arrived yet. And a third one, and one really critical one, is process variation, where when you're trying to predict how long something's going to take, it's very difficult to do if you're finding defects within that process that are causing things to take longer. The reason I've started with this video when I'm going into deep dives about different types of waste in a process is this is the single fastest way to create a bottleneck within your process. So in the bottleneck process, we have a very simple way of dealing with these types of issues. For the first thing we do is we find it, we identify where flow breaks down. Second thing we do is we fix it, so we remove that friction and we standardize tasks to make sure it doesn't happen again. And the third one we do is make sure that that flow is maintained by constantly having continuous improvement in your business to make sure you're constantly finding things that could be issues and fixing them. Now, these are part of the bigger lean tool set that you will have heard of in many kind of continuous improvement initiatives, but what I've done here is simplified things to make it usable for anybody to start straight away without needing any kind of belts or certifications. You can use these tools straight after this video. So phase one is all about finding. So I want to find where the flow is breaking down within my process. When I think about a process, I always think about water running through a pipe. Where is it being restricted within that pipe? Think about your work being the water. Once we've actually found it, we want to understand what's causing that. So we call that the root cause, because you don't just think about the first thing you can when you're trying to find out what's actually causing an issue. You really need to dig deep and ask a few questions to make sure you're addressing the right root cause. So this is a typical root cause diagnostic matrix. Now, this can be different types of circumstance, so symptoms, and on the right hand side we have what potential root causes could be causing those symptoms. So for instance, the top one, every employee does the job slightly differently. The root cause of that is inconsistent work methods and a lack of standard work. We could have consistent back and forth emails to clarify requests. Root cause is usually missing information somewhere or poor handoff processes. We could have something where the errors are only caught right before the delivery to the customer. The root cause of this could be either poor standards in the process itself or inspections being done at the wrong time. So this particular circumstance is being done right at the end. Could have people skipping steps in the process because it takes way too long. That's where we have to revisit the process if you're looking at this root cause and say, is this too complicated? Can this be simplified? And then we could have something like the software deletes data or machine cuts unevenly. And that's where we start looking at the process itself and thinking, is there some kind of tooling or system issue? Notice most of these root causes aren't people. There's something to do with your process, whether it's documentation or just the process itself that's going wrong, not the people side of it. So what I've done here is come up with a couple of different types of defects in a physical environment so we can get an idea of the type of things that you could be seeing. So the first one is a retail cafe. Now, there could be a defect where you have an incorrect allergy note on a food order ticket. Now, the cause of this could be shouting orders over a loud coffee machine in a busy retail cafe. The impact of this, of course, is the customer gets the wrong food, and the business impact is you need to replace that, so the cost of food will go up. It could be doubled. And then the bottleneck is the kitchen stops all the current prep work and has to do an emergency remake, hence stalling the entire queue. So that one simple mistake has caused lots of issues in the background within the kitchen. Second one is around a workshop environment where you've machined a part 2mm out of specification. The cause of this is machine calibration drift or inconsistent setup standards. The impact of this is scrapped material and wasted labour, and then the bottleneck is the assembly department sits idle waiting for the replacement part, which obviously needs to be done because of this defect. And the last example is e-commerce logistics, where you have a shipping label that's the wrong size box. The cause is manual machining of printed labels to unlabeled boxes. The impacts return shipping and replacement of shipping costs. And the bottleneck is customer service team is overwhelmed with complaint tickets, delaying other responses. Now, there could be more causes here, there could be more impacts, but you get the point. Everything has a knock-on effect to the wider business. Now, digital environments, you're talking about a lot of virtual type processes. So one very typical one I've seen a lot in a customer support type environment is that there'll be a bug that's raised, which is very badly described. So in this case, it just says it's broken. Now, this is due to the way that people have to actually submit their bugs. In this case, it's an open text email with no structured way of actually reporting bugs. The impact of that, obviously, is that there's lots of days back and forth trying to get additional emails and additional information just to get some basic details. Another bottleneck is that it clogs up the entire support queue and prevents engineers from actually fixing the software. This is very typical if you don't have any kind of standardized way to report bugs. The second one is around a creative agency and designing a website asset in the wrong aspect ratio. This is due to the fact that the client brief was given verbally and never documented. Lots of wasted design work here, 15 hours, completely wasted and has to be scrapped. And then again, the bottleneck is that you start having to use more and more of the lead designer's capacity to go back and redo that particular asset. And in the last one, the admin and accounting, supplier invoice doesn't match the original purchase order. The cause, manual data entries when copying numbers from one system to another. The impact, delay payment, supplier friction, hours spent chasing receipts. And in the bottleneck, your monthly financial reporting grinds to a halt. So there were some of the types of defects in a physical and a virtual background. This is how we're going to go ahead and fix them. So we're going to remove the friction, we're going to standardize the tasks, and we're going to improve the throughput. So here's 3 suggestions on the physical workflow issues that we had. So the cafe fix, you remember, they had an issue with the dietary requirements on the order. Now what we could do is bring in some standard work and visual controls where we implement a digital point of sale system that sends printed dockets directly to the kitchen, and it color codes any allergy modifiers in bright red on the ticket, making it very visual and easy to note. On the workshop fix, we could introduce checklists and 5S organization. The checklist being a 3-point calibration checklist that's mounted on every single machine. And then as far as is concerned, we could have shadow boards with calibration tools readily available so that visually you can see if any tools are missing. 5S, if you're not aware of that, is a very typical way of just organizing an area. It could even be your computer. It doesn't have to be a physical area, but it works well in physical areas where you go in, you basically sort everything out, you set it in order, you make sure everything is labeled correctly, you standardize things, and then you sustain this. It's a whole program of work that you can do in any environment to make sure things are standardized, and it helps especially in this type of machining environment. And the last one is the logistics fix. We're going to put some error proofing in here. We're going to have a barcode scanner that scans the box, and only when it's scanned it will it actually print off a shipping label, which you then attach to the box. And make sure that those 2 things, the box and a particular label, are always entwined, and makes it very difficult for you to actually produce anything without doing that particular process. On the digital side, similar things. We're going to have a fix at the front end, so quality at sources, to make sure that the inputs are correct. So we're going to make sure we have a web widget with mandatory fields that people have to fill in for any defect to make sure we have all the information, and then we can go ahead and action those. On the agency fix, we're going to look at the various types of work and put them into a Kanban or a visual board so that we can very clearly see, and we've got checkpoints to make sure all the information is being captured and any missing information will be seen very early. So it's a different type of approach, but very similar to the SaaS support fix. And then the last one, the admin fix, this is using some more technology, OCR, to start recognizing any issues in any kind of orders to make sure we're capturing them early. And the point of all of these things, where we're trying to find these issues and we're trying to fix these issues, is really to look at the flow of material through your business, whether it be a physical thing or a digital thing. What you usually find is on the left-hand side where you have a lot of chaos going on, lots of rework, lots of back and forwards between teams. We're trying to get rid of all of that by having standardized tools, standardized documentation that allows things to flow through and make sure that any kind of input required for that process is captured as early as possible. And we're trying to get to the right-hand side, which is a very simplified flow, no backflow, no rework, standardized checkpoints, catching errors quickly, and then you can predict exactly what's going to go on in that particular process. So phase 3 is all about flow. We want to prove the improvement. We want to create the accountability and prevent anything from going backwards. So we introduce a 5-step method to identify any defect. We're going to map the handoffs. We're going to make sure we understand exactly where work changes hands. This is usually where 80% of the issues happen, between teams or between departments, where things are changing hands, between systems. Very important to capture where files are going. All of those things we need to map and make sure we understand. Look at where things are waiting in your process. Typically, that's a good sign that you're having some kind of rework going on or some kind of delay from a previous step. As we're going through this process, make sure we're asking the people who are actually working with the process every day, not managers in the background. Make sure you're looking at people who are doing this daily. Track all of your issues. Make sure you're having some kind of log of issues as you get them so you can identify them easily. And then we're going to trace the root cause of why that issue is happening. It's very important to use a 5 why type process where you're asking yourself 5 times why something is happening to really understand what's causing it. I'll do a subsequent video on the 5 whys because it is a really interesting topic to get into and very easy for somebody to use. So here's my suggestion for a defect diagnostic toolkit. We have a checklist and then we have a process for communicating. So on your checklist, you need to start thinking about and talking to your team about several things. One is around, what does the communication look like? Are people constantly asking for clarifications within various parts of the process? That's usually a sign that something isn't coming through correctly. Is there lots of stuff in progress and not actually being done? Again, is things waiting somewhere to actually get some kind of fixes in place before they can move ahead? Where are your quality checks happening? I'm not a fan of having a quality check after every step, but if they're being done right at the end, you're catching things far too late. So where's the better way that you can start checking things that get done as you go through the process? Another big one, does quality drop when your best employee is on leave? If that happens, that suggests that a lot of the knowledge in your process is in somebody's head and could do with being written down somewhere so the other team or team members can take up the slack when they're off. Now, you can implement this stuff quite quickly. You can have a 15-minute daily huddle every morning and just have one question to start with. What stopped you from doing perfect work yesterday? And what you're trying to do there is understand what the blockers were from the previous day. So the agenda can be something like, what are your blockers? What are your priorities? And what support do you need? It can be very quick meeting this, either in person or virtual. And once you do that, you set yourself up well for the day, and then you give yourself various initiatives that you can go ahead and fix, which is obviously going to help you in the future. So try this approach with your teams. So this is part of your bigger continuous improvement ecosystem. So the bottleneck system is basically looking at various continuous improvement tools and stripping them back so they can be used every single day by anybody in your business. So it's all about finding an issue, fixing the issue, and improving that flow. Once we have those 3 aspects, there are other things that we can start introducing to help the teams be more profitable, have faster delivery, and increase the quality of your particular process. If you're interested in these types of videos, don't forget to hit that subscribe and notification bell, and I'll let you know whenever I produce new videos. And if you're interested in understanding more about your own process, hit the link in the description below. There's some free tools on my website that allow you to go through your process, look at the bottlenecks, and start understanding the impact of those bottlenecks. Thanks for taking the time to watch the video. Until next time, take care.